The United States may have lost the war in Afghanistan, but private military contractors have won, and they won big. Now, since September 11th, the 2001 September 11th attacks, of course, military outsourcing has helped push up Pentagon spending to $14 trillion, creating opportunities for profit as the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq stretched on. So this was actually a pretty fantastic piece written in the Wall Street Journal of all places. And they talked about the United States and its over-reliance on private contractors, when it comes to invading countries, going to war. And this is really something that blew up during the Bush administration as a result of his so-called global war on terror. So 1/3 to half of that sum went to contractors, okay? With 5 defense companies, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman taking the lion's share, $2.1 trillion for weapons, supplies, and other services, according to Brown University's Costs of War project. But here's where things start to get really good. A lot of that money, as some of you might imagine, was misused and did not actually end up helping in any way in regard to this global war on terror or the war in Afghanistan. So as a result of this global war on terror and this explosion of dependence on private military contractors, the government has had a harder time tracking how that money is being spent by the private contractors. But here's what we do know in regard to how they use those funds and how those funds were actually misused. Of the $7.8 billion in projects inspectors examined, only $1.2 billion or 15% was spent as expected on new roads, hospitals, bridges, and factories. At least $2.4 billion, the report found, was spent on military planes, police offices, farming programs, and other development projects that were abandoned, destroyed, or used for other purposes. And honestly, my favorite part of this story is the Kashmir angle. And I'm not talking about a certain city, I'm talking about literal like cashmere sweaters. The Pentagon spent $6 million on a project that imported 9 Italian goats to boost Afghanistan's cashmere market. The project never even reached scale.
I think that's around $700,000 per goat. That's some serious Italian goats right there. Okay, so I imagine there were other costs involved, but to me, it's fun to find these small examples. But there's the two big numbers for me are not the 14 trillion that we've spent in about 20 years, which is enormous. Insane. Enormous, what we could have done at home with that money. By the way, if you're a right winger and you believe in America first, why did we spend $14 trillion on not America? Okay, and by the way, to be fair to the right wing, a lot of them are asking that question now.
Yeah, let me jump in on that just real quick. For the first time I've ever noticed in this country, and there's never any talk about this in the media, which actually frustrates me a lot. The left and the right are in agreement.
Yes.
That we spend too much on the military, that we're spending too much of our resources abroad in wars that we should not be fighting, that we should not be involved in at all.
Yeah.
And so that's I guess a good update, but it doesn't matter if you're a right-wing voter or left-wing voter, we're living under corporate rule. And those private defense contractors that I just mentioned are the corporations who essentially get to decide whether or not we get involved in these wars abroad.
Yeah, and so lately I've been giving more and more credit to right-wing voters on very specific things, and this is definitely among them. And so it's not an accident, and obviously Anna knows this, that the media is not talking about how, hey, look, we have bipartisan agreement. Normally the media loves bipartisan agreement, right? But what's super interesting about this is that according to every poll, and by the way, you can see it in the right-wing comments, left-wing comments, it doesn't matter, all over social media, right? That we have bipartisan agreement in the country. We want to end the endless wars. We want to spend less on these offensive operations and starting wars and wasting all this money, right? Meanwhile, back at the ranch in Washington, they have bipartisan agreement to do the exact opposite. They've given record funding to the Pentagon, more than they even asked for, which we're gonna get to in a second, okay? So, but the media makes no note of it at all. wait, isn't that interesting? Right wing and left wing tearing each other to shreds. But there's one thing they definitely agree on: spend less on wars and the Pentagon. Yet the media does not report that at all. And in fact, when they passed the gigantic $780 billion defense spending bill, the media never asked the legendary question they love to ask whenever it's going to help you: how are you going to pay for that?
Never. They never asked that. In fact, the one time that the media was really like, they were all in cahoots, all very critical of Joe Biden and his administration, was when he pulled troops out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Incensed. They were incensed. Jake Tapper was furious.
No, of course, guys. So what you're seeing in mainstream media, and this is what the right-wing voters are right about, is not the news. It is the marketing arm of corporate rule. So when you all say in a poll, we don't want to spend this much money, the media goes, okay, good, let's bury that. And it's not conscious. This is a longer conversation about how it happens in the invisible hand of the market. But the bottom line is the same result. They bury that news, and instead they tell you, oh, Americans love defense spending, and they want to spend more. Why? Because it's the same operation. It's the same companies that give to politicians to buy their allegiance through bribes that advertise on these mainstream media outlets. Look, you will see advertised. So the two numbers I was going to give, one of them is the one Anna read you about, the 2.1 trillion, right? That just went to 5 companies, not 2.1 million, not 2.1 billion, 2.1 trillion. So that's, as you know, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman. Okay, so guys, that's the robbery. Those are the people that are taking our money, all of our money, right wing, left wing. They don't give a goddamn about where it comes from. And they're stuffing their pockets full of them.
Redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the top. That's what you need to think about whenever these stories come about. When they talk about the class war, when they talk about, understand that there's been a class war. There has been a redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the top in this country for decades, and here's a prime example of it. Continue.
So one of the many reasons conservatives agree with us is because, look at the other number Anna read you. Only 15% went to things that actually came to fruition, that actually worked. 85% was pork. They're just robbing us of trillions of dollars. But the robbers own the bank. So that's why they pay the bribes to the politicians, and then that's why they pay the bribes to the media, and the media tells you, no, the politicians are honest. And when they waste 85% of basically $14 trillion over 20 years, that's fantastic, and the American people love being robbed like that. Because they're not doing news, they're doing propaganda. And so right now, and did Biden stand up to them? Biden is part and parcel of corporate rule. Biden has absolutely no power. He's just a servant of his donors. So he has served them in this context as well.
I mean, look, if Biden actually wanted to flex the power that he does have, he could do that. But he's not doing that.
Of course.
He is very much going along with this system of corporate rule, even though, I mean, there's so much that he could do by executive order. I mean, look, I gave him credit when he pulled troops out of Afghanistan, but in regard to all the things that he claims he can't do, but absolutely can't do, things that he says he can't do, but can do. He could have, during a pandemic, expanded Medicare to cover every single American who's uninsured. He could have single-handedly canceled student loan debt. So many things he could do, but he goes along with what right-wingers and what corporations want in this country, and it blows my mind every time. Now, in regard to the defense budget, he just signed the National Defense Authorization Act to the tune of $778 billion. And I want to go to this graph. This is graphic 8, which shows you how much money the federal government has spent year after year on the defense budget. And it just keeps going up. In 2016, it was $612 billion. Biden just signed the new National Defense Authorization Act, also known as the defense budget, $778 billion. It just keeps going up. No questions asked, no debate. There's no nickel and diming the defense budget. But when it comes to ordinary Americans and their needs during a global pandemic, they'll nickel and dime you all day. We just saw it happen when it came to Biden's Build Back Better agenda, which was supposed to be a social spending package that helps ordinary Americans. In that regard, won't fight for it, nickel and diming us. We got to do means testing. In fact, I want to read you this short excerpt from a great Jacobin piece. Biden's military budget raises the Pentagon's base budget by about $40 billion. If the privatization of funds rate over the last 20 years holds, it means that the military industry will get about $407 billion from Biden's first military budget, $16 billion more than the $391 billion those $1,400 stimulus checks cost the government earlier this year.
Yeah, so I want to focus on those numbers. So if we give credit to Biden for getting out of Afghanistan, which I do, okay? And by the way, if you're a conservative, and by the way, a lot of you did give credit to Biden. The only people who didn't are the corporate media who are like, oh my God, what will Lockheed Martin do? By the way, check out mainstream publications and you will now start to see, if you read them at all, oh my God, that's an ad for Lockheed Martin. Well, I can't buy a missile from Lockheed Martin. I wonder why they're putting it in this giant newspaper or magazine or digital outlet, right? Oh, Raytheon, how that's weird. That's the bribe that they pay the media to buy them to do this insane propaganda that we'd like to have 85% of our money wasted, and to the tune of trillions of dollars. All right, so Biden, you get the credit for getting out of Afghanistan, so I guess we should spend less on defense. He says, no, I want to spend even more than Trump. I want to spend $40 billion more than Trump. And then he says, I want to spend $25 billion more than the Pentagon asked for. The Pentagon asked for everything they can get their, I was going to use more harsh words, but their mouth around, right? Pigs at the trough. And they're like, gimme, gimme, gimme. Because most of the major generals are going to retire and work for all the defense contractors. Some of that money is going to get funneled straight into their pockets. So they asked for as much as humanly possible. And Congress and Biden were like, nope, not enough. I'm gonna just throw another $25 billion in. Did you know that we can get the vaccine to the whole world for $25 billion?
I know, but that would save lives. Why would we do that when we could use resources to make private defense? By the way, small group of people, at the end of the day, small group of people who have all this control over our limited resources, okay? Why would we save lives when we can make them richer, when we can redistribute our resources from the bottom to the top? This class war has been going on for decades, but it's not the poor fighting against the rich, it's the other way around. And again, this is a prime example of that.
So not just Republicans, but by the way, every Republican, but also Manchin, Sinema, and in reality, Biden, just said we don't have enough money for child tax credit, we don't have enough money for universal pre-K, we don't have any money for any of these things that would tremendously help you through these hard times. But they just gave $407 billion. So you remember how the package got whittled down to 1.5 or 1.75 trillion to help average Americans? And now Manchin has even killed that. Just the 407 over 10 years is over 4 trillion. It's over $4 trillion that goes just to private contractors, just in defense. It's a robbery. Any reporter that doesn't tell you it's a robbery is not a reporter, they're a marketing specialist, okay? And so finally, the last number is, these private contractors, just in the defense industry, have over 700 lobbyists. Gee, I wonder why. And somebody wrote jokingly in a reply in one of my tweets over the weekend, oh, it's probably because they want to help the American people understand what is in their general welfare. And that's why the defense contractors have hired, as an example, 700 lobbyists to just inform us of how much it would help us if we gave them $4 trillion, okay? And reporters report that as if that's true. Like, oh, the lobbyists that spend all that money on politicians, those aren't bribes. No, they're just doing it for charity. Nobody's that stupid. Nobody's that stupid. No, this is highway robbery and they do it every year at record amounts. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.